Okay, welcome again, welcome back. It's good to see you again. It's good to see you again. It's good to see you again. I'm glad to see you again. I'm really glad to see you again. I'm delighted to have you back with me for another edition of Vaughan Inglés 4.0, an English course designed specifically for you, for people with ilusión, with people who want to learn English, with people who have time to learn English, and with people who are willing, gente dispuesta, willing to make the necessary effort to learn it, because effort is part of the equation. The equation has three variables, three elements in this equation: time, effort, and money. Now, if you reduce money, you need to increase effort and time. Okay? If you reduce time, probably you need to increase money and effort. Okay? Now, if you reduce effort, money and time, maybe. But if you have all three, it's the best formula for success. But effort is unconditional. Effort is there. Without effort, forget it. And without time, forget it. Money, it depends. You can learn English well without money or only spending very little money. But effort and time are always in the equation. I'm sorry. So, let's go over a few of the things we saw in the last class. Let's go over the conditional a bit, and let's go over all, even though, in spite of, despite, in spite of the fact that, and despite the fact that. Okay? Camera one. All right. If I knew you personally, I would call you and encourage you to make an ongoing effort. Ongoing significa continuado, esfuerzo continuado. If I ate 10 hamburgers in one day, I would get sick. If I drank 4 liters of milk in one day, probably I would get sick. If I saw a spider on this table, I would probably jump, okay? A small spider, no, but if I saw a tarantula on this table, I would, I think I would continue teaching. I bet, me he puesto, because of the concentration in this program, when I'm teaching you, because you can't see the table. You can't. At the beginning, yes, on the other camera, when Jorge brings the camera forward, at the beginning you can see my hands on the table, etc., playing the drums, but now you can't see the table. Now, if I were here, si yo estuviera aquí, ahora es el condicional, fijaos lo bien que lo construyo yo, que dominio tengo de mi propio idioma. Okay, if I were sitting here, at this camera number 1, teaching you, and a tarantula started to walk across the table in front of me, I bet I could continue. And you wouldn't realize that there was a spider in front of me, a big spider, hairy, peludo, a hairy tarantula on this table in front of me. I bet I could do it. I bet I could. Now, if the tarantula turned and walked towards me and came up like this, I think I would tell Jorge, corten, okay, let's stop, okay? And I would get rid of the spider. But if the spider continued walking on the table and didn't come towards me, I would try to continue teaching. Now, if it were, si fuera, if it were a cockroach, la cucaracha, if it were a cockroach, I think I would be able to continue teaching anyway. Siempre que, as long as the bug, el bicho, didn't come towards me. Or maybe if I were teaching you and a tarantula and cockroach began to walk on the table towards me, I would discreetly, I would discreetly go, okay, and continue teaching. Would you notice? Would you notice? Some of you would, and some of you wouldn't. Some of you would, and some of you wouldn't. Some of you would, and some of you wouldn't. 3 veces he repetido esto por un motivo. La M de Sam es una letra de enlace. Okay? La conectividad silábica. Okay? Y la M se cierra la boca. Some of you, algunos de vosotros sí os daríais cuenta, y otros no. Some of you would and some of you wouldn't. Por favor, recordad este M y practicadlo. Some of you, some of them, some of us. Okay? Y no digáis son of us. Eso es hijo de nosotros, hijo de ellos. Son of us, son of them, no. Some of them, some of us, some of you. So, even if a spider started walking across this table, I would continue teaching you and wouldn't change my face. I would notice the movement of the tarantula out of the corner of my eye, por rabillo el ojo, but you wouldn't realize that I was paying attention indirectly to a tarantula. Okay? Yes, yeah. And even though there is a tarantula in this room somewhere, I saw it when I arrived this morning. Even though there is, es que hay uno por aquí, pero está escondida. But even though there is a tarantula in this room, I'm going to continue teaching. Now, my legs are on the floor. And you know, wherever there's a tarantula, there's another one too. Did you know that? Donde hay una tarántula, wherever there's a tarantula, there are two. Male and female, always together. So if you see one tarantula, you can be sure there's another. Okay? So there are at least 2 tarantulas in this television studio right now. Where? I don't know. I don't know. And even though there are 2 tarantulas, they could walk on my feet down there, I'm not going to show fear. I'm going to continue teaching. In spite of the fact that there are 2 tarantulas in this room. Despite the fact that there are 2 tarantulas in this classroom or in this television studio, which for all practical purposes is our classroom. I'll check for tarantulas during the break and the next teacher, and then I'll be back.
Thank you, Richard. Hello, everyone, or g'day, as we say in Australia. G'day, everyone. I'm your teacher, Natasha, and today, to help you and to help me and to help everyone, Susanna is here with me to practice English. How are you?
Fine, thank you. How are you?
Good. Do you want to try and say hello like in Australian English?
Could you repeat it?
Yeah, it's g'day.
G'day.
G'day. G'day.
G'day.
She's still like a bit shy. Yes, g'day, okay? And here we're in Australia when we're with me, so we have to say g'day. Do you agree?
Good day.
No, it's not good day, because otherwise you sound very English.
Okay.
Okay,
So
it's g'day.
g'day.
G'day, all together, because otherwise it just sounds too posh. Okay? Do you know what posh is?
Yeah.
What's posh?
It's like snobby.
Yeah, or refinado, okay? And we're not refinados, we're g'day, okay? All together. All right, so at home, very important, as you know, we're going to review everything you saw in the previous class, okay? We have a lot to do, so let's start straight away, enseguida, okay? Remember, to practice, you need to speak out loud. So whatever I ask you and whatever I ask Susana, you have to try and answer out loud at home. It doesn't matter who's around, it doesn't matter who can hear you, you need to practice, okay? So let's start. Are you ready, Susana?
Yes.
Okay, the first thing we're going to do is a translation list. I say the sentence in Spanish and you and Susana say it in English, okay? It's a piece of cake, isn't it? What's a piece of cake?
Muy fácil. ¿No?
Yeah, pan comido. It's
Pan
a piece
comido.
of cake, okay? Ready? ¿Te lo comprarías si fuese más barato?
Would you buy it if
If it were
cheaper?
cheaper. One more time.
Will you buy it if it were cheaper?
Would you buy it if it were cheaper? One more time.
Would you buy it if it were cheaper?
Very good, okay. Remember, okay, the verb to be in the second conditional is always, always, always were, never was, okay? It doesn't matter if it's the third person or whatever, you cannot say was. It's always were. So if it were cheaper and not if it was cheaper. So repeat at home, lo compraría si fuera más barato. Very good. Would you buy it if it were cheaper? Very good. Okay, the next one is for Susana as well. Are you ready? ¿Harías más deporte si tuvieras más tiempo?
Would you make?
Would you do?
Would you do more sports if you have more time?
If you had more time. Okay, let's go to the people at home, okay? Would you do more sports? Very important. You do exercise. Always, always, always. Whatever exercise it is, you do aerobics, you do whatever. Always to do exercise, okay? So would you do more, did I say sports? Would you do more sports or would you do more exercise if you had more time? Had, always in the past simple in the second clause, well, in this case with if, okay? If you had more time, okay? So repeat, ¿harías más deporte si tuvieras más tiempo? Very good. Would you do more sport or more exercise if you had more time? Okay, one more time, Susana, let's see if you can get it. Would you
do more sports if you had more time?
One more time.
Would you do more sports if you had more time?
Very good. Okay, now we're going to move on to the other thing you saw last class, okay? We're going to see despite the fact that, in spite of, and in spite of the fact that, okay? I'm going to say a sentence and both you and Susana have to rephrase using a sentence with the four of them, okay? So let's start, okay? Susana, even though she accepted the job, the conditions were terrible. So use despite.
In the spite of...
No, despite.
Despite that she likes the job.
Okay, let's see. So despite, and we need a noun phrase here. So despite the bad conditions, okay, despite the bad conditions, she accepted the job, okay? So you at home, repeat. Very good. Despite the bad conditions, she accepted the job. So let's go back to Susana.
Despite the bad conditions, she accepted the job.
She accepted, okay? As if it were a K and then an S. Accepted, okay? Never accepted, okay? All right, let's go back to Susana.
Despite of the bad conditions.
Despite of, never. Okay, so be careful because this is very common because obviously you have in spite of, yes, you have the preposition of, but despite, never. So despite the bad conditions, she accepted the job. But in spite of the bad conditions, she accepted the job. Okay, so one more time, let's see if Susana can say it.
Despite the bad condition, she accepted... Conditions, she accepted the job.
Very good. Despite the bad conditions, she accepted the job. Now, despite the fact that the conditions
were bad, she accepted the job.
She accepted the job. Despite the fact that the conditions were terrible, she accepted the job, okay? Now let's see with in spite of, Susana.
In spite of the bad conditions.
In spite, like a snake.
In spite of the bad conditions, she accepted the job.
Very good. Now you at home, in spite of the fact that. Very good. In spite of the fact that the conditions were terrible, she accepted the job, okay? So remember, and just to review, okay? Remember that with despite, you never ever put of, and obviously with in spite of, you do put of there, okay? So remember that. And thank you very, very much, Susana, and thank you for being there once again, and I'll see you next time. Keep on studying. Bye.
All right. Are you ready? I'm not sure if I'm ready, but look, instead of starting like this, maybe I should start like this. What do you think? Instead of looking away from the camera, maybe I should start simply looking at the camera. Instead of being in a resting position, maybe I should be alert, okay? Instead of speaking slowly, maybe I should speak fast. What do you think? Well, I don't speak slowly when I teach. However, I articulate my speech a bit more than usual. Look, instead of changing to camera 1, instead of switching, instead of changing to camera 1, maybe it would be a good idea to continue with camera 2. I don't know. Instead of following the instructions of Jorge and Maria, maybe I should simply do my own thing. You understand? Do it my way and not their way. Su de ellos, eh? Their way, my way. I'll do it my way. I won't do it their way. Okay, so instead of paying attention to them, maybe I should pay attention to my own conscience, okay? But nevertheless, instead of staying on this camera, I think it's better to follow their indications, to follow su de ellos, se pronuncia their, to follow their indications and migrate from camera 2 to camera 1, okay? Let's follow my migration. 1, 2, 3. Okay, and they don't follow. They don't follow, you see? There, okay. You see? He's asleep, all right? He's asleep, all right? But it doesn't matter. This is an English class, all right? Not a television show. So instead of changing, when I changed, he was sleeping on the job. I can't sleep on the job. I can't, all right? Because I have to be alert every minute. I cannot, you know, when you work, your job is easy. Maria's job is easy. Jorge's job is easy because most jobs, in fact, 99.9% of the jobs, you can stop for a moment in the middle of your work, yawn, look out the window for a second, and then turn back and start working. So in essence, you can take a 30-second break. And maybe you can take a 30-second break every 3 or 4 or 5 minutes. So 1 hour of work perhaps is 45 net minutes of real work. And that's normal. But as a teacher, teaching in the classroom or on the television or on the radio, 1 hour of work is 60 net minutes of work without a single moment of relaxation. I can't close my eyes for a minute to rest my eyes. I can't yawn. I can't pick my nose. I can't do anything because I have to concentrate on this. Okay. And instead of yawning, I have to be alert. Instead of stretching, I have to stay still. Instead of looking out the window and looking at the dark clouds in the sky and saying to my neighbor, que amenaza lluvia, it's the rain, it's threatening, the sky looks threatening, I have to concentrate. Instead of, en vez de, en lugar de, o sea, instead of living in Madrid, I'll move to Barcelona, for example. And there's a synonym, instead of, dos palabras, instead of, y se junta, instead of. La D al final de instead se enlaza de forma muy clara con la OF de of. Instead of. Dove. ¿Cómo se dice paloma de campo? Dove. Como el jabón Dove, Dove, Dove es paloma. Paloma de campo, no de ciudad. De ciudad es pigeon. Dove. Instead of. Y luego el gerundio. Instead of going to the beach, why don't we go to the mountains? Next summer, hey, Ginny, yeah, listen, instead of going to Texas, why don't we go to Slovakia? Okay? And a synonym is rather than. Rather, TH en medio, rather than going to Texas, también con gerundio, eh? Why don't we go to Slovakia? I want to visit Bratislava. Yeah. Because they tell me that Bratislava is more beautiful than Dallas. So I don't want to go to Texas. Rather than going to Texas, let's go to Slovakia, huh? And then let's go to Slovenia and visit Ljubljana, the capital, okay? Let's go there. No, okay? And instead of going by plane, rather than going by plane, instead of going by plane, rather than going by plane, let's drive. My God, from here to Bratislava? Bratislava is practically in Poland and very near Ukraine. Yeah, well, so what? So what? So what? Ike. So what? It's too far. Well, listen, we have a whole month. How long does it take to drive? How long does it take to drive from Madrid to Bratislava? Well, it depends. Well, what does it depend on? Well, it depends on how far we want to drive every day. It depends on how many hours we want to spend in the car every day. If we want to drive 10 hours a day, it takes 3.5 days. 3 very long days or 4 relatively long days to reach Bratislava. Maybe 5. And then 5 to come back, 4 or 5 to come back. The first day from Madrid to from Madrid to Perpignan. The second day from Perpignan to Munich. The third day from Munich to maybe Bratislava. 3 days. Yeah. Well, then okay, that's too far. Well, look, rather than driving there, let's fly. But then let's rent a car. Rather than using the public transport facilities, let's rent a car. Okay, good. Let's rent a Fiat Uno. No, instead of renting a Fiat, let's rent a Mercedes and enjoy the car, okay? Yeah. All right. Rather than, gerundio. En vez de hacer esto, hagamos aquello. Instead of doing this, let's do that. Instead of doing that, let's do this. Rather than learning, let's teach. Rather than drinking water, let's drink some whiskey, okay? All right. We have our sponsors waiting to tell you something. I don't know what, but then we'll be back after 4 or 5 minutes. Don't go too far away. Okay, I have some recommendations for you. Would you like some recommendations? Recommendation number 1. Instead of being lazy, why don't you be active? Instead of being pessimistic, why don't you be optimistic? Rather than thinking everything is gray and dark, why don't you enjoy life and think everything is light and bright and beautiful? Rather than being fatalistic in your attitude or tragic, why don't you be spontaneous and fun and happy? Rather than thinking that English is impossible, why don't you think that it's easily possible? Yes, attitude is everything. When you have the right attitude, con te, you usually develop the right aptitudes, con pe. Okay, our next teacher and then me.
Thank you, Richard. Hi, everyone. I'm Hannah, and I'm here again with all of you to practice what you've just learned from Richard. So I really hope you paid attention, because now I'm going to put you to the test. But not only you, my student that I have here with me, whose name is David. Hi, David.
Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you today?
Good, thank you.
Okay, great. So I'm going to put you to the test.
Okay.
Okay, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, great, good. He's very confident. So we're going to look at some examples here using instead of. All right, so instead of plus, mas, plus gerund. Okay, so I'll give you a sentence and I want you to use instead of. Here we go. Don't phone her, send her an email.
Instead of phoning her, send her an email.
Perfect, great. Instead of phoning her, send her an email. So let's repeat. Instead of phoning her, send her an email. They didn't pay in cash. They paid by credit card.
Instead of paying in cash, they paid by credit card.
Okay, very good. Again, repeat.
Instead of paying in cash, they paid by credit card.
Okay, very good. So instead of paying, again, instead of más gerundio plus gerund. Instead of paying in cash, they paid by credit card. Pepe didn't do his homework. He went to the party.
Instead of doing his homework, Pepe went to the party.
Okay, very good. All right, Pepe, you're very bad. Bad boy. So you didn't do your homework. So instead of doing his homework, Pepe went to the party. Okay, they didn't prepare the food themselves. They called a catering company.
Instead of preparing the food themselves, they called a catering company.
Okay, good. Repeat again. Again.
Instead of preparing the food themselves, they called a catering company.
Muy bien. Very good. Great pronunciation. So let's repeat the sentence. Instead of preparing, so preparing the food themselves, they called a catering company. So, mucha gente, a lot of people say catering. Ay, mira el catering ahí,
Yeah.
catering, right? No, pues mal, muy mal. Okay, so in English it's catering. Repeat.
Catering.
Perfect, muy bien. So catering company. So they called a catering company instead of preparing the food themselves. We didn't wait for the bus. We decided to catch a taxi.
Instead of waiting for the bus, we decided to catch a taxi.
Very good, excellent. So instead of waiting for the bus, so here remember we have to put to wait for, la preposición for. Cuando esperas a algo o a alguien, hay que poner for. So to wait for. Instead of waiting for the bus, we decided to catch a taxi. I didn't come here first. I went directly to the meeting.
Instead of coming here first, I went directly to the meeting.
Okay, very good. Okay, good. Instead of coming here first, I went directly, and you can say directly or directly. Las dos son iguales. I went directly to the meeting. Good. Okay, don't get angry, get even.
Could you repeat, please?
Yes, of course. So don't get angry, get even.
Okay. Instead of getting angry, get even.
Okay, muy bien. Okay, now that sounds a little bit strong, a little bit tough, right? But it's true, vamos. Okay, so instead of getting angry, en vez de enfadarte, so instead of getting angry, get even. So what does get even mean in Spanish? Well, do you know that verb? It's desquitarse.
Ah, okay. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
So for all of you people who want to get even, yes, instead of getting angry, get even. Get even. But in a nice way. Okay? Like don't do anything crazy. All right. She didn't marry Carlos. She married his brother.
Instead of marrying Carlos, she married his brother.
Okay, very good. Okay, instead of marrying Carlos, she married his brother. We didn't increase the budget. We cut some expenses.
Instead of increasing the budget,
Repeat, instead of?
instead of increasing,
Good, increasing.
instead of increasing the budget,
Good.
we cut some expenses.
Very good. Okay, great. So instead of increasing the budget, so let's repeat, budget, we cut, right? We cut some expenses, gastos. He didn't hire an assistant. He did everything himself.
Instead of hiring an assistant, he did it himself.
He did everything
He did everything himself.
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 Eso es, himself con M, himself.
Himself.
Okay, very good. Okay, so let's repeat. Instead of hiring an assistant, he did everything himself. So again, remember, contratar is to hire, not to contract. Okay, es un amigo falso. So contratar is to hire. So repeat the sentence with me again. Instead of hiring an assistant, he did everything himself. Él mismo. Don't send a letter. Send her some flowers.
Instead of sending the letter, Instead of sending a letter, send her some flowers.
Okay, good, great. Instead of sending a letter, send her some flowers. And send some chocolate too while you're at it.
Instead of chocolate.
And send some chocolate, and además.
Okay, yeah.
No
Both.
solo flores, sí. Send some chocolate too, porque no? You know, flowers and chocolate. Oh, it's a nice combination, okay? All right. They didn't pick up their children. They dropped them off.
Instead of picking up their children, they dropped them off.
Okay, very good. Okay, good. Here we have two phrasal verbs, right? Verbos compuestos. We have to pick up, recoger, and to drop off, dejar en un sitio, alguien o algo en un sitio. So they didn't pick up their children, they dropped them off. So instead of picking up their children, they dropped them off. And here metemos them entre las dos partes. ¿Por qué? Porque es pronombre. Okay, so when we have a phrasal verb que es separable, when we have a pronombre, lo metemos entre las dos partes, nunca después. Okay, so again, instead of picking up their children, they dropped them off. Okay, great job, David. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching us at home and practicing, but keep practicing because that's the key. And I'll see you next time. And back to Richard. Bye-bye.
Okay. Rather than keeping my papers like this, I prefer to put them here. Rather than, en vez de, en lugar de, instead of. Es curioso. Bueno, lo explico en la cámara 1. All right? Rather than, yeah, this time he changed, okay? Rather than, instead of. They're synonyms. But the expression rather than, curiously, includes a bit of un poco de ganas, o me apetece, ¿ok? Porque tenemos la expresión preferiría. I'd rather drink water in class than tea. I'm not crazy about tea. Well, some teas, yes. But I would rather drink water than drink tea or Coke or Pepsi, ¿ok? I'd rather. Eso es preferiría. Entonces, cuando usamos la expresión rather than, es como hay una preferencia involucrada aquí. Instead of, es un poco más neutro, aunque puede incluir también preferencia. Maria, instead of water, I prefer some rum, please, un poco de ron. Could you add some rum to this water instead of only water? But rather than is a bit more preferential, a bit more personal than instead of. Instead of is simply factual, un hecho. Instead of going to New York, we made the decision to go to Miami. Instead of going by plane, we made the decision to go by ship. Instead of arriving on Saturday, we arrived on Sunday, okay? In fact, it can be totally aseptic and impersonal. Instead of directing the flight to New York, the air traffic controller directed the flight to Boston. Okay, rather than is correct here too, but rather than is more of a feeling. For example, the air traffic controller. You know, rather than sending the plane to New York, I'm going to tell the plane to land in Boston because New York is dangerous because there's a lot of fog right now on the airport. Okay, and so the news report or the final report says instead of going to landing in New York, the plane was redirected to Boston. Okay, but for you, don't worry. Ante la duda, instead of, because rather than sounds a bit incorrect, not incorrect, but a bit funny in certain situations that are totally impersonal and aseptic, all right? Instead of publishing the report on Friday, the committee decided to publish the information on Saturday. But rather than is okay. All right, so instead of coming to our English school, you have decided to watch us through television, radio, mobile, and internet. Instead of going to classes, presential classes, you decided to do Vaughan Inglés 4.0. Instead of, rather than. Y rather, la TH en medio es una TH vibrada. Rather. Y ese sonido fonético lo tenéis en castellano con la D suave. Dado, los dados, hada, madrina, Madrid, rather, es igual, idéntico. Madrid, rather. Rather than sitting in front of me on the sofa, why don't you sit in your bedroom and watch the TV in your bedroom? Instead of studying vocabulary, why don't you study sentence structure? Instead of reading the sentences passively, why don't you say them aloud? Instead of watching movies in English, why don't you watch documentaries and news programs? Instead of studying late at night, why don't you get up early in the morning and study? It's more effective. Yes. What time do you leave home to go? Do you work? Do you have a job? Yeah? What time do you start? 9 o'clock. What time do you leave home? 8:15. Well, what time do you start getting ready? What time do you get up? 7:30. Okay. You get up at 7:30, you leave home at 8:15, and you get to work at 9 o'clock. Okay. Well, why don't you get up at 5 instead of 7:30? What? Yeah, instead of getting up at 7:30, why don't you get up at 5 o'clock? 5 o'clock? You're crazy. Why? Well, what am I going to do between 5 o'clock and 7:30? Study English. In the middle of the night? That's not the middle of the night. Get up at 5 o'clock tomorrow. No way. Para nada. No way, Jose. Yeah, get up at 5 o'clock. Well, do you study English? Yes, I do. When do you study it? Between 11 o'clock and 12:30 at night. Okay, so you study for an hour and a half every day. It's not bad. Yes, from 11 to 12:30. So what time do you go to bed? Well, about 12:45. And you sleep until 7:30. You go to bed at 12. Well, what time do you fall asleep? I fall asleep at 1 o'clock in the morning. And you get up at 7:30. Yeah. So you sleep 6.5 hours a night. Is that correct? Is that right? Yeah, that's right. 6.5 hours. Okay. Well, listen. Instead of going to bed at 1, go to bed at 10:30. 10:30? No. I have dinner at 10:30. It's very late, in my opinion. Look, well, instead of having dinner at 10:30, have dinner at 9. And go to bed at 10:30 and sleep until 5. That's 6.5 hours. 2. Get up at 5 o'clock. Everybody in your house is asleep. Okay? There's no noise. Drink a coffee and sit down and study English for 2.5 hours, not an hour and a half, 2.5 hours, from 5 to 7:30. Okay? But I can't get up. I can't get up at 5 o'clock. I can't go to bed at 10:30. I can't have dinner at 9 o'clock. Well, why not? Because it's difficult. Oh, really? Is it really difficult to have dinner at 9 o'clock? Yeah. Why? Because we're used to having dinner at 10 or 10:30. Because you're used to having dinner. You can't change your habits to your benefit? I don't know. I suppose we could. But at 11 o'clock, when you start studying English, is your wife still awake? Yeah, she's still awake and she's moving around the house. Are your children still up? Yeah, my children are still up. So there's a lot of noise and commotion. Yeah. Well, at 5 o'clock there isn't. It's the best time to study. very early in the morning. Okay, let's go to another teacher, and then let's finish in a few minutes.
Thank you, Richard. My name's David Wardell, and I'm here with a very, very, very special guest today, star of stage and screen, David. How are you today?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm very, very well. Are you ready to learn some English today?
Yes, I'm ready.
You're going to work very hard, yeah?
Yes, I'm
Of
ready
course
to
you
work
are.
very hard.
Good, good, good. First of all, we're going to look at some vocabulary, yeah? 5 pieces of vocabulary, because every day you have to learn 5 words. It's part of the course, and you have to do it. Okay, so the first word is well-informed. Well-informed. Now repeat the word for me.
Well-informed.
Well-informed. Good, very good. We have a very good ending there. Well-informed. What does well-informed mean?
Bien informado.
Bien informado. Perfecto. Muy bien. Muy fácil. Hasta ahora. Okay, the second one is a noun, a politician. A politician. A politician. Can you repeat that word for me?
A politician.
Yeah, politician.
Politician.
Not a politician or politician. 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 Un político, no? Yeah, so say it one more time.
Politician.
A politician. Politician. Muy bien, a politician. Now, the third word is a verb, and it is to bury. To bury. Now, this is a little bit confusing because it's actually spelt B-U-R-Y, which I suppose in Spanish will be burri, burri. But we say bury. Any idea what to bury means?
Cavar.
No.
Enterrar.
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 Exactly. Very good. Cavar is to dig.
Yeah, yeah.
And then afterwards to bury. To bury. And in fact, un entierro is a burial. A burial.
Okay.
Whew. Okay, the next word. Let's move on, shall we? The fourth word is threshold. Threshold. Can you say the word threshold?
Threshold.
Threshold. Any idea what the word threshold is in Spanish?
No, I don't know.
The threshold is a place.
Yeah.
Yeah. Normally, when you walk through a door,
Yeah.
you walk through the threshold. The threshold.
Okay.
So how do you say that in Spanish?
El umbral.
Umbral. Muy bien. Perfecto. Umbral. Threshold. Can you pronounce it, please?
Threshold.
Threshold. Con TH. Threshold.
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 D. With a D at the end.
Okay. Threshold.
Threshold. Perfect. Muy bien. Threshold. Threshold. We also use it in the context of pain as well. I have a very low pain threshold.
Okay.
Low pain threshold. If you do that to me, then it hurts a lot. A low pain threshold.
Okay.
Okay, then the last word is the lyrics. The lyrics. Now, what does the lyrics mean
The
in
lyrics
Spanish?
son las letras de una canción, ¿no?
Muy bien, las letras. And can you say the word for me?
Lyrics.
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 Lyrics. Lyrics. Con L-Y. Lyrics. Lyrics. Yeah? Can you say it one more time?
Lyrics.
Lyrics. Okay, so I want you to repeat the words one more time. So, well-informed.
Well-informed.
Muy bien. A politician.
A politician.
To bury.
To bury.
Again?
To bury.
Bury. Bury. Yeah, very good. With B. Bury. Threshold.
A threshold. A threshold.
Okay, better. Again?
A
Not
threshold.
F threshold. Threshold.
Threshold.
Better. Muy bien. And the last one, the lyrics.
The lyrics.
The lyrics.
The lyrics.
Muy bien. 5 words. Only 5 words per day to learn. It's very important that you learn them. All these words, of course, you'll find in your vocabulary booklets. So study them, okay? So now we're going to look at a structure which means en vez de or en lugar de. But it's not instead of. It's a slightly more formal expression. Rather than. Rather than. Can you say rather than?
Rather than.
Rather than.
Rather than.
Así, sacando la lengua 2 veces. Rather than. Again?
Rather than.
Muy bien. Okay. So the way we're going to do this exercise is I'm going to give you a sentence, and I want you to change the sentence to include the expression rather than. For example, I will say something like, he wants to go to the cinema. not to the theatre. So, rather than going to the cinema, he wants to go to the theatre. Rather than going, because after rather than, we use the gerund. Rather than going to the cinema, he wants to go to the theatre. So can you please repeat that sentence?
Rather than go to the cinema.
Rather than going.
Rather going to the cinema.
Rather than going.
Rather than going to the cinema.
Yeah.
He wants to go to the theatre. The opposite. Rather than go to the cinema. Yes?
No.
He wants to go to the theatre.
No, yeah,
Rather than going to the cinema, he wants to go to the theatre.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Something like that. Anyway.
Okay.
Un poco liado, pero
Yeah.
well. Let's try the next one, shall we? Okay. He steals. He doesn't pay for things. He steals. He doesn't pay for things. So how would you transfer that to this structure?
Rather than paying,
yeah,
he wants to steal.
Or he steals, yeah. Rather than paying for things.
Rather than paying for things, he steals.
He steals.
Okay.
Very good, repeat.
Rather than paying for things, he steals.
Exactly. And also, we can put rather than in the middle of the sentence. So, for example, he steals rather than paying for things.
Okay.
Yeah, he steals rather than paying for things. So can you please repeat that?
He steals rather than paying for things.
Very good. Rather than paying for things.
Rather than paying for things.
Very good. Rather than más gerundio, siempre. Okay, let's do another one. He saw the film, he didn't read the book. He saw the film, he didn't read the book. So,
rather than reading the book,
yeah,
he wants to see the film.
Or he saw the film.
He saw the film. Okay.
Yes. So he saw the film, he didn't read the book. One more time.
Rather than reading the book, he saw the film.
Muy bien. One more time.
Rather than reading the book, he saw the film.
Good, in casa. Rather than reading the book, he saw the film. Repeat. Bien. Muy bien. Okay. And also, of course, if we put rather than in the middle of the sentence, how would we construct it? How would you do that?
He saw the film rather than reading the book.
Muy bien. Repeat.
He saw the film rather than reading the book.
Very good. He saw the film rather than reading the book. Now let's do a very quick translation, yeah? So, en lugar de hacerlo así, hazlo de esta manera. So,
rather than doing like that,
doing it like that.
Rather than doing it like that, do it this other way.
This way, yeah.
Do it this way.
Manera. Muy bien, okay. Él robó en vez de pagar por las cosas. Again,
he stole rather than paying for things.
Y en presente, él roba.
He steals rather than paying for things.
Yeah, repeating the last one again. Okay. Lo compró a crédito en lugar de utilizar sus ahorros. So, crédito is on credit.
Okay. He bought it on credit rather than using his savings.
His savings. Muy bien. Okay. Hemos quedado sin tiempo. Entonces, please practice. Y ahora I'm going to hand you back to Richard. Thank you.
Okay. Class number 26. And tomorrow, class number 27. Conditionals tomorrow. Yes, the past conditional. Very difficult. Oof, this is very complicated. Complex grammar. The past conditional is the easiest conditional in the world. It's a bit long, but it's so clear, so easy conceptually. The theory is perfectly clear, and we'll practice that tomorrow. We'll practice many things. And during the course of the coming classes, durante el transcurso, during the course of the coming classes, I'll talk to you more about tricks to find more time to solve the problem with the English language. All right. Take care and see you tomorrow.